Hi, Governor Romney. I'm James, and I'm doing a series of videos on how the 2008 presidential candidates are officially incorporating YouTube into their campaigns. So let's take a look at some of the videos you posted. By far the video that has the most views, many of your videos, is a telephone conversation that you're having with a radio show host in which you respond to a video that was posted about...
Just an example of the kind of visually what was going on there and how really, really low budget it really was. I was using a $60 webcam that I got from Best Buy. I think it was the cheapest one I could find. I later on got a $30 microphone to improve the audio quality a little bit. It's me in my dorm room. I had a lamp shining on my face. I was using a couple-year-old laptop and Windows Movie Maker, which if you know anything about movie editing, is the lowest of the low editing software you can get. It comes free with Windows. So it's really basic. And I didn't even really know how to use that at first. At first I was like, how do I cut off the beginning and end of me turning on and off the camera? But eventually I taught myself how to use it, and I later on moved to a Mac, of course, for video editing. Anyone? I've noticed that people, like, if they throw out Mac, they get applause, so I just kind of wanted to piece of that. So I was doing this, and eventually YouTube featured me on the homepage of their website, YouTube.com, which if you ever go just to YouTube, the site, it's one of the videos on the very front page there, because they too were interested in my message of candidates should treat YouTube more like a conversation. I didn't really realize that they would be. Only after the fact does it kind of make sense that they would be. But I was helping YouTube out, and so they helped me out and put me on the homepage. That got me the attention of a lot of media outlets like the Washington Post and later CNN, Fox, BBC, NPR, The Economist, all these places where I was eventually, because I was one of the very few people talking about how the candidates were using YouTube in their campaigns, I was suddenly the go-to expert, still in college, still this is my dorm room talking on this cheap webcam, about how the candidates were using YouTube in their campaigns. Not very many people knew about it, and in fact, there was really nobody who knew more about it than I did because it just started. So I was able to carve out this weird little niche for myself and become known as an expert in this area. And this went on for a while, and another fun thing that happened while I was doing this in my dorm room was I reached out to the presidential candidates. I had a producer tell me, you know, if you ever get Barack Obama in your dorm room, then that would be really big. You'd really get a lot of attention that way. So I thought, all right, I'll try reaching out to all the candidates. So I sent YouTube messages to all the candidates who had YouTube accounts, which is really the worst way to reach out to anybody. But eventually, I did get a response from someone from your home state of Texas, Congressman...
Hi everybody, I'm James, and today we're talking about Texas Congressman and Republican presidential candidate, Ron Paul. You know what? Just holding up these pencil puppets, it's just not doing it for me anymore. It's time to take these videos to the next level. And there's only one man out there who can make that happen. Congressman Ron Paul, thank you so much. In my dorm room, and first I just want to say that this is the first presidential candidate, or the first interview ever, to be conducted with a presidential candidate from a college dorm room. So I just want to congratulate you. Today we're making history. First I wanted people just to have
We had a great conversation. We talked for about half an hour. So a lot of the novelty of this video, of course, was this is a presidential candidate. These are my toiletries right here. And also, so for the next time I had Mike Gravel over in my dorm room too, so I got a lot of bad comments about that, so I had to kind of clean it up a little bit. But the fun part of this was that Ron Paul is huge on the internet. Huge. Every time that Ron Paul's mentioned anywhere on the internet, you are guaranteed to attract a swarm of Ron Paul supporters boosting it up, or if he's mentioned in a negative way, just completely trashing it. I didn't really recognize the power of that at the time, but the fact that Ron Paul was my first person really worked out well for me, and this became one of my most popular videos ever. So that happened to me, all because of YouTube, making videos on YouTube from my dorm room. And the next thing that happened was I was doing these media interviews, and I graduated from college. I eventually got a job with Politico.com because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the videos. I just knew that after I started making videos for a while, I was like, I should really try and make a living at this stuff, although I didn't know how that would be. Eventually, Politico.com, who had done one of the stories on me, hired me as a full-time video blogger, which was very exciting. So now what I do is I have a daily show on Politico.com called Playbook TV, where I kind of talk for 2 or 3 minutes about funny things that are happening in the world of politics and the news and such like that. And I've traveled around to California, Iowa, New Hampshire, all because I was just posting videos from my dorm room on YouTube. And the other funny thing that happened was, and Teresa mentioned this at the beginning of the speech, but I was at an interview to CNN in New York City, and I talked, and Dan Rather happened to be in the green room. So I had my MacBook computer, which has a little camera built into it, so I thought, you know, why not ask him to do an interview? This is just the CNN green room here.
Hey everybody, I'm James Kotecki, and I'm in the CNN studios waiting to go on a show, and who should I run into but Dan Rather. So Dan Rather, I consider myself kind of like a journalist. You know, I post videos on YouTube, I've interviewed some candidates. Now you were one of the premier journalists of the last century. Like, what is, do you have any advice for me? Do you have any advice for me as a guy who just...
So, I don't want to show the whole thing, but you get the idea. You talk for a couple minutes. This is the last video that I want to I think this is the last video that I have, just making sure. And then I want to take a couple questions if we have time. Yeah, this is it. That's an example of Playbook TV. This is it. So the example of this was, so this I think, for some ways, for me, it represents kind of an iconic video because we were both sitting in the CNN green room. I did this interview with him right before he went on a show on CNN. And if you go into the CNN studios in New York City, it's right off Columbus Circle, beautiful, multi-million-dollar studio, you know, vaulted ceilings, hundreds of computers, people, lights, cameras, all the best equipment and everything else. Dan Rather went on the show and was broadcast to, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands or millions of people. And that went out all over the world. But I, on the other hand, was just with my little MacBook computer. I just flipped it open. It's a couple $1,000 worth of a studio. I edited it on the Mac. I uploaded it from the internet on the Mac, and that was it. So we both interviewed Dan Rather that night, and although I'm sure more people saw him on CNN, the potential for people to see Dan Rather in either of those two mediums was all over the world, because anybody can see anything that's on YouTube. The difference was that my studio was a couple $1,000, and their studio was multi-million dollars. And that is, I think, indicative of the real power of what YouTube offers. Not a completely level playing field, but definitely a much more level playing field for allowing anybody with a message or a vision to get that out there. And so the last kind of thing that I would leave you with is, before we take questions, is that if you have something to get out there, put it on YouTube, because you never know what can happen with it. The election is huge. You guys have the primary election coming up March 4th. It's actually going to matter in Texas this year. It's going to be very important in terms of who at least for the Democratic side, in terms of who the Democratic nominee is. Hillary Clinton is in a must-win situation out there. So either if you're an Obama supporter, get out there and stop her. If you're a Hillary Clinton supporter, get out there and support her. But what I think the power of, I think the thing that about my story, the reason I tell you this is just to say that I was just a college kid in a dorm room uploading videos to YouTube. And all this stuff happened to me to where I now have a full-time job video blog. And if you have something to say, you can get it out there on YouTube as well. People often talk about voting as being the ultimate in civic participation. You know, if only we could get young people to vote, or if only we could get more people to vote, then all of our ills would be you know, alleviated. But I think that's basically just the minimum level of participation that we should aspire to, especially because, I mean, looking around, it looks like a lot of you guys are pretty much my age. And there's nobody in DC or Austin, in your case, who really represents people that are our age. I mean, we have to make our voices heard in other ways, in more creative ways, and the internet, Facebook, blogs, whatever. I mean, the group, you know, 1 Million Strong for Barack Obama became very popular on Facebook. And he, as we saw in that video, is attracting a lot of the youth vote. So, because no one else is speaking out on our behalf, we have to speak out for ourselves, and the best way to do that, I've found, is to use this new medium that I think people that are my age are maybe more comfortable with, and that we're able to be heard. Because if you think about a college senior as a YouTube political pundit expert person, it would never have happened unless I was able to demonstrate that on YouTube. I think there's a lot of kind of locked up you know, talent out there that maybe would not be recognized through traditional mediums. If I had applied to be a reporter at CNN, I would be basically getting people coffee right now. But because of YouTube, because of the leveling of the playing field, I was able to have my voice heard. And I hope that if you leave with nothing else, it's just that if you have something to say, you know, from at any age or at any time, it doesn't take a lot, but you can be heard. So with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.